Hi guys, welcome to Bible Breakdown. We're doing Isaiah chapter 47. This chapter is titled The Fall of Babylon. So for verses 1 to 4, starting with verses 1 to 3, I wrote that it talks about the judgment that falls upon Babylon that will humble them. And because we know it's from God, verse 4 talks about how God will be praised because he's the God of vengeance. So one way they're going to be humbled is by being humiliated. So in verse 2 and 3, it says, "Take millstones and grind flour, remove your veil, strip off your skirt, bare your thigh, wade through the streams. Your nakedness will be uncovered and your disgrace will be exposed." So everything that they've done that is evil will be exposed. And on top of that, God tells them that he's giving them no mercy. He says, "I will spare no one." Then for verses 5 to 7, I wrote that this is the why. So the why behind their judgment is their pride. I also wrote that after God decided to use them as an instrument, they were under the impression that they had all the power to overcome their assignment. Mind you, it was all God all along. So verse 6 says, "I was angry with my people. I profaned my possession, and I handed them over to you. You showed them no mercy. You made your yoke very heavy on the elderly." And even verse 7, it says, "You said, I will be the queen forever. You did not take these things to heart or think about their outcome." So it's like they kind of let the pride get the best of them without thinking of what was going to come after that. Now going forward to verse 8 and 9, I wrote that judgment was thrown at Babylon for the abundance of using sorcery and spells. And because of that, they lost their children and they were widowed. And that happened over one day. So verse 9 tells us, "These two things will happen to you suddenly in one day: loss of children and widowhood. They will happen to you in their entirety, in spite of your many sorceries and the potency of your spells." Another reason why I enjoy reading the book of Isaiah, I figured it out in this chapter. So I noticed that when something evil is like being brought up, or something evil that somebody does is being brought up, right before, God presents how he is better than that evil choice. So in this instance, for verses 10 and 11, I wrote to always note that true power and protection can only be found in God and not deceptive practices. So summing up those verses, it basically talks about how when you're rooted in wickedness, it kind of blinds you to the wisdom that you need to kind of guide you through disaster. So I feel like here, God is like, if you don't follow him, you're setting yourself up for failure. And then to end the chapter, for verses 12 to 15, I wrote that God goes on to call out and challenge the spells that are being used and the sorcery that's taking place to try and save the people from his judgment. I also wrote that later on their power will be exposed as weakness, and in addition to not saving others, they can't save themselves. And in this sense, I'm talking about they as in the spells and the sorcery. So when God calls them out, that's in verse 12, and he's basically like, take your sorcery and your spell and see what you can get from that. He kind of taunts them at the end, and he says, "Perhaps you will be able to succeed. Perhaps you will inspire terror." But then when you continue to verse 13, it talks about how these things are worn out. So it's like, call back up with the constellations. And then for my next point, when I said they can't save themselves, that's from verse 14. So it says, "Look, they are still stubble. Fire burns them. They cannot rescue themselves from the power of the flame. This is not a coal for warming themselves, or fire to sit beside." And the last line of this chapter says, "No one can save you." Like, it's really putting into perspective all these things, all these outside things outside of God doesn't stand a chance against him. With that being said, that is all I have for you guys. That is the end of this chapter, and I will see you tomorrow for Isaiah chapter 48. I love y'all. God loves y'all more. Have a great night.